2 games into the season, the Los Angeles Dodgers look like a super team. The St. Louis Cardinals look more like the 2023 Cardinals than what we were hoping for. Is it time to panic? Is it just 2 games? All of that and more on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Oh, man. Andrew, I'm glad we've got the new rebranding because that's about as fun of things as there's going on right now in Cardinals. I just a quick vibe check, not even getting into, like, are we panicking yet? How are you feeling today after the first 2 games of the series?
I know what I'm gonna say is controversial, but like I came into this weekend with the mindset of, you know what? At least one of the teams that I enjoy watching is going to
Okay,
win
no.
games this weekend. But now, after I've watched the games, my mind is completely flipped. I'm upset. I'm not happy. And yeah, it's been a really, really bad first 2 games for the Cardinals. Do we expect it? Yeah, I said going to the series that I don't expect much against the Dodgers, but this team just looks exactly the same, and that's really worrisome. It's not that we're losing the games; it's that we're losing the games in the exact same way that we did last year, and yeah, it's not great.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely can't argue that the first 2 games have felt like the 2023 Cardinals, but I will say, like, I feel like last night was a little bit better. The offense looked I mean, I know obviously Bobby Miller will get into that, diced them up, but once they got to the bullpen, they looked a little bit better, scored 3 runs. I have a lot more confidence watching this bullpen right now than I did last year, so that's improvement at least. Like, I know Riley O'Brien's give up runs, Giovanni Gallegos gave up a home run, but it doesn't feel like as big of a issue as it was last year. And then even like the defense, Victor Scott in center field right now has been exciting to watch, and he's made some good plays. So there's some like incremental things that are like different than last year, but overall, yeah, that's the feeling. It's so I think the real question right now, like before we even, and I guess both of these will kind of coincide with each other. So maybe ask them at the same time. But we've started this new segment, um, call, razor, fold, and so basically Andrew, I want you to call, raise, or fold on. Do you think it's time to panic on the Cardinal season? Is it really already over before it began?
This is a loaded question for 2 games into the season,
Hmm.
but honestly, I kind of started panicking once Sonny Gray got hurt, and the Cardinals were like, you know what, we're not going to go out and sign Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, who were sitting out there for like a whole month before. Like they had a chance to go out and add more pitching, and they just didn't. So I'm not really confident in this rotation without Sonny Gray. I feel like it's very reminiscent of what we saw last year, right? You don't have Wayno and Woodford in the back. You have Lance Lynn instead, which I mean, it's better, but it's not that much better, right? And the lineup is showing a lot of questions right now. And if the lineup isn't good, you just can't win games, right? That's just not how this team is built. You can't win. Like this team is probably not going to win any games 1-0 this year. I have my doubts on that. But like I am not as I did not come in as optimistic as most people did. I thought this was going to be better, but I wanted to see how the first couple of games looked, and I wasn't going to base it off the results. Right, last year opening day we lost 10-9 to the Blue Jays. If we had lost 10-9 on opening day yesterday to the Dodgers, I would be like, okay, that's fine. The Dodgers are going to score 10 runs a lot this season. That lineup is just one of the best we've ever seen. And to at least put up a fight. But like we lost 7-1, one home run from Goldschmidt, and three hits. All from Paul Goldschmidt. The rest of the lineup goes 0 for 27, and it's like okay, we said this lineup had so much depth, but it's just one guy who's kind of carrying it right now. Yesterday looked better. Nolan Gorman contributed quite a bit. Mason Wynn had a couple of knocks, but it still doesn't look like they're putting up that many competitive at bats, right? Bobby Miller was dotting. He was locating really well in the strike zone. And the Cardinals struck out looking 7 times out of their 14 strikeouts yesterday. And it's like, it seems like you're kind of just giving up. If you strike out looking that many times, like a couple of them, granted, there were some questionable calls on the edge, but like the umpire was pretty consistent in giving that bottom of the zone to the pitcher throughout the night. So like you need to make those adjustments. You need to be able to figure that out and then be more aggressive on the first pitch. The first game, Tyler Glasnow was kind of all over the place. You were chasing his breaking stuff. You need to make the adjustment to maybe not swing at that all the time. And then the second game, you need to make the adjustment to be more aggressive when Bobby Miller is putting everything in the strike zone. You needed to attack him early. It didn't really happen. And it's just the lineup looks worse than we thought it would be. The rotation is as advertised, and that doesn't bode well for the success of this team.
Yeah, I'd say short story, I'm not panicking at all. And it honestly, part of it's because it's my expectations with the team, which was that they can't beat the teams like the Dodgers, but that they have the tools to be able to be an 80, mid 80s win team, sneak into the playoffs because of NL Central. And so, but long story, I definitely have concerns, and it's reiterated. Like someone said this the other day, I thought it was a good way to look at it. It's harder to not get frustrated or not panic when the very issues that we were concerned about, the very issues that are already bubbling up. But again, it's 2 games into the season. There's 160 more games to go, and they're facing potentially a historically great team. And they're not like, if your expectations, which I don't think anyone's was, and I feel like I get accused of being one of the most optimistic Cardinal fans out there, and I had zero expectation they could compete with the Dodgers. So if that was your expectations, then yeah, you should be panicking because there's no shot this team could compete with the Dodgers in the postseason, even the regular season. It looks like. But if you're telling me this means like the way they're performing right now means they have no shot to beat the Rockies, the Padres, the Pirates, the Nationals, the Mets, even the Phil. Like I know the Phillies are really good, but they're not the Dodgers good. Okay, like this is a different class of team, and this is a strike against the Cardinals. Like they haven't done enough to make them like at least a team like the Phillies can play up with the Dodgers. The Cardinals can't. They're not good enough. And so I mean there's a chance they win today. Like they could. It's the regular season. I mean, you mentioned there's probably not going to win any games 1-0. Like in 162 games, you're probably going to win a game 1-0 at some point. In a 162 game season, the Dodgers are probably going to have a game where they only put up 4 hits, and the Dodgers fans aren't going to be like, "Oh, the Dodgers suck." I get it; it's different when your expectations and the talent level you give a little more leeway. But I mean, if the Cardinals had come out and won 10-3 and 7-2 the past 2 games, I wouldn't be out here being like the Cardinals are World Series contenders. I'd be like, it's baseball. You win games, you lose games. I'm not going to take big. I'm not going to draw big conclusions from this team until probably the end of April. But even then, it's probably the end of May when I'm really going to be like, this is what this team is. But that's not the same thing as this team has the ability to be patient like last year. Because the difference is last year, I thought they had the tools to turn it around, but they dug themselves so deep of a hole, it didn't matter. And clearly the holes, like the glaring weaknesses never got solved. This team, I think you can like have issues and figure things out going into May, but if they have a 10-24 start like they did last year, it's over. So they can't preach patience of like the record doesn't matter. The record does matter. But I'm not going to panic and say this team can't do anything or just clearly isn't good enough. And sure, like, I mean, people in the chat are like, the Philly staff is good. Yeah, it is really good. You've got Wheeler and Nola, but I'm saying like the complete Dodgers team. Like last night, you even looked, the Mookie Betts was making diving plays. So their defense is elite. Their pitching's elite. Their bullpen's borderline elite. And their lineup's elite. Like I can't think of another team in baseball that doesn't have or that has elite units all around. That's not saying the Cardinals might not be bad. They could be. But I just have a hard time after 2 games in a 162 game season against a team that I think most of us are like, this could be one of the best teams of all time. And we're just like, oh, the Cardinals, they're the worst team in baseball. It's like, I want to know how many teams look like the worst team in baseball against the Dodgers. And maybe in a month from now, the Dodgers don't beat up on other teams like this. And then we look back on this. It's like, okay, clearly the Cardinals were just bad. But we've seen them play the Padres in the Korea series, which I personally, you can disagree on it. I personally don't take a lot of stock in that series because it just feels like it's weird. You have to travel across the continent or across the globe. You're playing in a different environment. I know the game's counted, but it feels more like like the actual results. I don't take a lot in. And also that's a 2 game sample size too. So I just think that's too early to make these big calls on it. But if you're someone who was already pessimistic, I get why you're just even more pessimistic. I just haven't changed. I've said I feel like this is a mid 80s win team that if they're aggressive at the deadline can maybe get up to 90, but they have to patch some pretty significant holes. But also I've also said the line for the margin for error is super small with this team. And so, like, it's not an excuse injuries, but a team like the Dodgers is so well built that if they had a couple injuries, they can continue to win a ton of games. The Cardinals can't afford to not have Sonny Gray. The Cardinals can't afford to have Lars Nootbaar out. Like, it just isn't. It's not great. And so, I'm I'm not super concerned right now outside of the concerns I already have. And I'm so eager to see them play against the Padres and the Marlins this next week because the Marlins, I think, are going to be worse than last year. I think that's pretty clear. The Padres look better than last year, but I think this is where you start to see, okay, they played the class of the league. Clearly, they're not doing anything right now. And they still have 2 games left, so it would be really funny if they win the next 2, and then everyone has to be like, what do we do with this team? But then the Padres and Marlins is a little bit more of a fair fight. But that's a thing against the Cardinals front office, right? Like they just haven't built a good enough team to compete. Like because it's baseball. Even if you don't have a $200+ million payroll and all the superstars, you can find ways to beat teams like that. And the Cardinals just have such glaring holes that they can't do that. So I do think it would be interesting for us to, especially you with how you've watched this team and cared about the Dodgers team with Otani, buy Razor or buy Razor Fold, call Razor Fold. Do you think the Dodgers might end up being just like this juggernaut, historically great team? Or do you think, or maybe you're more on just they're just having a really good stretch right now, but they're not that good?
I do think they're a really good team. Part of that is because I think like Shohei Ohtani has the capability to become the best hitter in the entire league, especially when he's not focusing on throwing and pitching. And adding that to a team that already won 100 games, you add a Glass now, you add a Yamamoto, who I think could be one of the best pitchers in the entire world. Teoscar Hernandez has some sneaky power in the 6 hole. And I don't know. Is it too early to say that they're going to be like one of the top like teams of all time, like maybe giving the 116 win Mariners a run for their money? I don't really think so because they spent $1 billion this offseason, and like it's how it is, right? They're playing checkbook baseball, and now I wish the Cardinals could play checkbook baseball, right? And like if the Dodgers had gotten off to a cold start, like you mentioned, I don't think anybody would really be panicking, right? But the Dodgers added Tyler Glasnow, Shohei Ohtani, Yamamoto, Teoscar Hernandez, and like what did the Cardinals add? They added Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson and Sonny Gray,
Yeah.
who's just like making a trade in the middle of the offseason, right?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah,
One thing I want to say too is I like agree they are checkbook baseball and they are spending money like no other team. But the thing that I really admire about the Dodgers organization is the way Andrew Friedman has built them like he
yeah.
built the Rays. And so like Bobby Miller last night is a draft guy. He's a
Mhm.
prospect they've had. And I know you know this, but like that's the thing about the Dodgers that is just so incredible is that they've gone out, they spend the money, they make great trades, they get all the superstars, but then they also bring up a ton of young talent. So they're not just like a team like the Mets that's trying to buy a World Series. They've built a strong, maybe the strongest organization in all of baseball and spend the money.
Yeah, and they bring in the right guys too. Like Ryan Brazier was terrible before he went
Yeah.
to the Dodgers, and we saw what he did last night. Evan Phillips, their closer, was a journeyman. He bounced around and he was terrible. And then he came to the Dodgers, and now he's an all-star caliber closer. So I like they just do all the little things right, and that's fine. I don't expect to win this series. Like obviously,
Yeah.
it's also like the best we do now is a split. And I think that's even generous. A sweep probably is the most likely, honestly, from the last 2 games of this series, if you're asking me. But I want to see the fight out of this team, right? I want to see the offense string together a couple base hits, fight, battle back in their at bats. If they fall behind, foul pitches off, take balls that are not competitive, and then like fight and try to get on base. At least work the pitcher's count a little bit. But Bobby Miller yesterday, like he was completely on, right? He was really,
Yeah.
really good yesterday. And you tip your cap, right? Like Mike Schilt does when the opposing pitcher just is like that, right? Like that's just what you do. But um, the fact that they weren't being as aggressive as they should have been, the fact that they struck out looking that many times, like you shouldn't be striking out looking for half of your strikeouts in the game. And like if you strike out 14 times, it'll happen. But the fact that you just weren't giving, you weren't competing, right? If you strike out looking, you didn't even try, right? And a
Yeah.
lot of the pitches were
Well,
borderline.
I don't
That's
know if they
fine.
didn't try. Like Bobby, let's
Well,
give Bobby Miller credit. Like, and I'm not you're
right,
not, but like he looked filthy. Like, I
right.
mean, that's not to say the Cardinals shouldn't have been hitting him, but like the
I,
way he was sequencing his fastball and changeup, and then he had the nasty slider too. It's like, jeez.
yeah. But,
So
like, it's not getting any easier tonight, right? Yamamoto is an established veteran in the
we'll see.
Japanese league. Is he gonna have
Yeah.
his command? I don't know, but, like, I know what he's capable of doing, so I think out of all of their starters, he has the highest ceiling because he's only 25 years old. He's already won 3 Japanese league MVPs, and I'm scared. We could score 5 runs off him in the first inning and drive him
Yeah.
out of the game. That would be nice. I would not
Yeah.
mind that, but I really don't think that's gonna happen today.
Hmm.
But, like, I just wanna see more quality at bats out of this lineup before I say it's like a top 3 unit in baseball like we had in our bold predictions. Like, I need to
Oh
see
yeah.
more out of the lineup. Like, Paul Goldschmidt, my doubts about him this spring completely gone. I didn't really have that many doubts about him, to be fair, because he's always a bit of a late starter. But the fact that he's hitting the ball this well in April, or not even April, in March, is good enough to basically be like, yeah, he's not washed or old or whatever people are saying about him. But the rest of this lineup, man, like Brendan Donovan doesn't look like he's putting together a lot of quality at bats. Nolan Gorman looked really good, but Nolan Arenado, I feel like, is somebody I'm worried about. He didn't have a great spring. His at bats, like he hasn't been hitting the ball that hard. He
Yeah.
had that
He
one
just missed
swing
a
going
home
in the
run
spot.
though. Yeah.
He just missed one, and I that would have changed the game. That would have been big, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, it's just a
Here's the
lot of
other thing too.
frustration,
Like,
and yeah,
like think about postseason baseball. Most
mhm.
games are super low scoring because you have the best pitchers in the game and the team's best players are pitchers starting. Like good pitching beats good hitting most of the time, which is the problem with this Cardinals team is that in the regular season, this is again, I've been saying this is a regular season team. In the regular season, it's definitely not the best strategy in the world. Again, we talked all off season they need to go with 2 top starters. But we've seen teams get into the playoffs because their pitching just gets them by for games, gets them quality starts, and their offense carries them because the opposing team can't just go to their best relievers every game. They don't get to throw their best starters every game. You kind of just have to wear the season out. But you look at this Dodgers team, their rotation right now is Glasnow, Bobby Miller, Yamamoto, Gavin Stone, James Paxton. The last 2, you're kind of like, guess who's on the IL right now and will be back at some point? Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Shaheen. I am pretty confident the Dodgers are probably going to add more pieces at the deadline too. Their pitching is
Also,
just
there's
like,
also this other guy who's batting second for them, who's going to come
well, so
back
that's
at
the other
some
part. Yeah, so he'll be here next year. But then you also look, and again, this isn't to say this is not defending the Cardinals. I just want to focus on how good the Dodgers are right now because I think it's worth it. I'm pretty sure this is the first time we've ever seen 3 MVPs in a lineup before with Mets. I'm pretty sure I've seen them
I
multiple
think the
times. People
first
say
time we've
that.
seen 3 MVPs bat 1, 2, 3. Like,
Yeah,
because
1, 2, 3. Or
yeah.
so like, but like that's important because you might have had an MVP, but he was batting the 8th or 7th because he's not that same guy anymore. You have 3 MVP level players in Freddie Freeman, Otani, Mookie Betts, with Will Smith, who just paid 100 and whatever $1 million to James Outman, Max Muncy. Like they have all these other talented players too. Like this team is stinking good, and so I definitely don't think it's too early to say that this team could go off and end up being 116, 120 wins. That's so hard to do. But the thing that really separates them is they have the pitching depth because when everyone's healthy, like how on earth do you roster? They have like 9 different guys that could start in most rotations in the top 3 in the rotation. Like let alone not just like, oh, they have a bunch of guys that could be 5s. Like they have like 3 or 4 guys you could be the best starter on a really good staff. And then everyone else could slot in 2, 3 on most of those staffs. So it's just insane to watch. And they don't even have Gradwell right now. Do they have any other relievers out? Blake Tareen. Like they're just insane. And then they have more prospects coming up like Diego Catera, Miguel Vargas is even up, Andy Pajes. Like this team's legit. So that's why I'm just not, it's hard to take a lot from this because I have a feeling a lot of teams are going to look not very good against the Dodgers. And then we talked about this a little bit pre-show, But one of again, this is just a flaw with how the Cardinals are built, and it sucks. But when you face really good pitching, if your lineup is not getting to them, because at the end of the day, if Bobby Miller's dealing, like you can maybe get some hits off him, maybe score, but most really good pitchers when they're on like that, they just don't allow runs. That what makes them so good. There's a reason their ERAs are so low. It's because no one's scoring off them, not just the Cardinals. But what you have to do is you have to get to the bullpen quicker. And so I think that's something that I think was a little bit of a miss. Game 2 is that Bobby went 6 innings, which isn't a ton. So that's good. They got him out by the 6th inning. But then immediately the next inning, they score 3 runs off of who was it that came in?
Michael
Grove. And so like that's an encouragement to me, is that the Cardinals at least cannot get him. Well, they didn't really knock Bobby Miller out of the game. He was just so good striking them out. They ended up having to get pulled. But what they need to be able to do is get those starters out of the game a little bit quicker and capitalize against the bullpen, which they didn't capitalize in game 1. Part of it, I'm like, well, when you're down 7-1, I could see the momentum being gone. But that's the problem with the last year's team. You can't keep getting down 7-1 and expect to come back in these games. And it's not an excuse for the lineup. But again, the first 2 games of the series, I feel like they really shined a light on some of the issues of this team. But again, I wasn't expecting this team to be a World Series contender. I thought it was a stretch to say they could win a playoff series, but I boldly predicted it because I think they'll do something at the deadline. And that's part of it too, is that like, if you're going to, like when I think of this team being good in the second half and making the playoffs, I'm not saying this team's going to be the exact same team today as it is then. Like I'd expect the Cardinals to add the deadline to make that kind of thing. If they try to get through the entire season with this rotation, entire season with this team as currently constructed, then it really is like an 82 win team, 83 win team at best. But again, I'm baking into my head that when they're a contender, they usually go out and make some moves. And it might not be the splashy ones, but they'll make some upgrades. So I do think let's talk a little bit more about the series and things that we're seeing and we're liking, and maybe some things that we need to keep an eye on for the next few games. I do want to talk about who we think has been pitching well. So on the Cardinals side, don't have a lot to say. I don't know if you have a Cardinal that you think is dealing right now. But I'm going to go with Bobby Miller. I know we've talked about a lot of him already, but geez, that guy looked so good last night. And maybe it's just the Cardinals. But with the way he looked last night, he's been a top prospect in baseball, so it's no surprise. He's got the talent, so he's not just coming out of nowhere. Sometimes this happens with a little bit of young pitchers where usually this happens. Their first year or two coming up, they've got the stuff, but they're not as sharp. He had command last night. He was throwing a filthy changeup that I just thought was unhittable, and he was perfectly spotting it. So if he's got command of these pitches now, watch out. Bobby Miller might just be in the same class as Yamamoto and Glass now at this point. So we'll have to see. But that's the guy I think was really dealing. It's weird to say because he gave up a lot of runs last night, and then I'll turn over to you. But I thought Zach Thompson was okay. I thought he made 2 really big mistakes, but when you face the Dodgers, you can't afford to make mistakes like that. And he had taken deep both times. And I just was impressed that he kept going out there. It was competitive. He got out of some jams, but obviously he didn't look great. So I'm not going to try and act like he's dealing, but the home run balls killed him. And you can't, that's not an excuse. He gave up 5 runs. It was not a good start. But I think you can look at that. Like with Miles Michaelis the other day, there's so much that went wrong where it's like, you can't be like, oh, if he fixes that and maybe doesn't make that mistake, he would have been okay. He tried to say that. He kept trying to say it's a weak contact game, which no. But like Zach Thompson, I'm like, hey, you hunt a curveball. That you can't do that against Teoscar Hernandez, who mashes lefties. And then he spotted the fastball okay, but Teoscar took him deep. And it's like, okay, you got to be better there. And if he doesn't make that, especially that hanging curveball, that's a 3-run swing. So I don't know. That's where I'm like, okay, like Zach Thompson, I could see the path for him to be not giving up 5 runs in 6 innings every time. But Miles Michaelis, on the other hand, I don't necessarily see a strong path forward for him, especially against good lineups. So, Andrew, I don't know if there's any specific pitchers you watch from the series that you're like looking really good right now.
Yeah, Miles Michaelis looked terrible. He needs to stop saying whatever he's saying to the media. Like, please stop. Like, we're not Midwestern farmers. You're making $20 million this year. I really wish you weren't making that much. But like, come on, like, don't blame the umpires. Like, we saw the umpire scorecard. There was one pitch that didn't go your way, and it was that walk to Ohtani. And let's be honest, like it's Ohtani. What do you want? What do you want from that? Like you want to throw another pitch, he might take you deep. Okay, like it's not like you walked Miguel Rojas on a questionable call and then he came around to score and probably would have struck out otherwise. It's Shohei Ohtani, right? Like what do you want to do? And then Ollie defending him, we'll get into that later, but I didn't. Zach Thompson, I felt like he was kind of unfairly thrown into a bad situation. The Dodgers are already hot, coming off a game where they were just on fire, and Zach Thompson slotting in as the number 2 starter, it's not really fair to him. So I think he made a good effort in terms of what he was given. He made good pitches. It could have been a lot worse, right? Like for a young guy like him coming in and facing that lineup, he really could have like let it blow up. He could have allowed like a 10-run inning at some point, especially with the pitch clock. It's really hard to get like slowed down and like regain composure, and he did a good job of that, despite like just not having great results. And I'm excited to see, like he's probably the pitcher I'm most excited to watch their next start of.
Yeah.
Because like the rest of our rotation right now is Lance Lynn, Steven Matz, and Kyle Gibson. You kind of know what you're going to get out of those guys. Maybe Steven Matz will be better, but I don't know. I thought he was fine. Tyler Glasnow was also dealing. Aside from that one home run to Goldschmidt, he like made all our hitters look silly, right? There were all these breaking stuff in the dirt, and we're just chasing it, and just non-competitive at bats. Which, I mean, I guess it's fair. Like if I stand in the box against these guys, I'm not going to know what's going on. I'll strike out looking every single time. Like the ball will blow past me before I can even swing, right? So like I understand how hard hitting is, but like if we're claiming to have this like all powerful like top 3 of the league lineup, you need to do better even against these guys, right? Like you need to put together more competitive at bats. You need to score a couple of runs early in the games, and maybe we got unlucky. Maybe those 2 guys were just on those 2 nights that we've played the Dodgers so far. But if I see the same thing out of Yamamoto tonight, I'm really going to start to question whether or not this lineup is truly elite. Because like I know that Yamamoto can be one of the best pitchers in the league, but if we do that on 3 nights in a row where the lineup just falls completely silent, I'm going to start to question whether or not this lineup can really do what we think it can.
I'll disagree a little bit on the lineup being silent because last night they had 6 hits and the Dodgers
Right.
had 7 hits. And I know, like, obviously part of this is slugging. Like, you've got to take advantage of stuff. But, like, we faced Bobby Miller, they faced Zach Thompson, and they're the Dodgers line. Like, that's where I think game 1 was bad. Yeah. But also, even the best lineups will get shut down sometimes. So that's why it's so hard because you need large sample sizes, but also after a certain sample size, then you're like, well, it's too late. But also it's not like the Cardinals, like teams don't make trades this early. So it's not like they can turn around and trade for Shane Bieber right now. Like the Guardians aren't going to do that. Unless they gave up the world to get him. Obviously I'm not trying to act like they did well against Bobby Miller because they didn't, but they got 2 hits and a walk. They didn't score any runs, but then right when Grove came in, they took advantage of it. They capitalized, and that's what they have to do. And honestly, they left some runs on the board there. And again, you could nitpick them for that, and I get it, but also I'm like, hey, it looked pretty good. And Nolan just missed making it a 6-5 game, which would have totally completely changed the outlook of things. And Brazier and Evan Phillips are really good relievers, so sometimes you're going to score against them, sometimes you're not. But then, the Dodgers put up 5 runs against Zach Thompson and had 6 hits off him. But then Gallegos came in. The one hit he gave up was the solo home run to Rojas, which wasn't good. And then Romero shut them down. So, I mean, again, this is where I think I could see the blueprint coming in. Is like, okay, maybe Zach Thompson, if he's facing the Twins, gives up 3 runs. Maybe, I don't know. Like maybe that's fair to say 3 or 4 runs. And then if you're not facing, I don't know, like I could see when you're having a little bit easy, like a little bit more fair matchups for Zach Thompson or for Miles Mikolas or whoever, and you're facing their like not Bobby Miller at his peak or Tyler Glasnow. You put up a few runs against their starter, and then you put up more runs against their bullpen. Your bullpen shuts down. But again, the margin for error here is really thin with this team. So, yeah. But I don't think the offense looked as bad as people said. I think like the first part of that game against Bobby Miller, and then the last game was so bad. But then they turned it on against the bullpen. So I think you got to give them credit for that.
I'll make
let's talk.
One counter to that. like Michael Grove never was like that tout of a pitching prospect. He's kind of like the last man in the bullpen. He's like what Drew Verhagen would have been for the Dodgers. And it's like, I understand. It's like the sequencing, right? It's kind of yesterday's game was kind of like how the offseason went, right? Like you open up the game and you started, you signed Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson, right? You gave up 6 runs. That's tough. And then
Fair.
like you come back and you sign Sonny Gray, you score 3 runs. Okay, but it's still like not a great offseason, right? That's
Fair.
kind of how I see yesterday's game. It's like if the Cardinals, it's like when they put in Matthew Liberatore in the first game in the 9th inning, right? The Dodgers didn't score off him, but like you wouldn't be surprised if they scored a few runs off him. Like it's like any lineup can get to Matthew Liberatore or whoever your like last man in your bullpen is. Like they were up 6-0. It was the 8th inning. Like you needed somebody to, or the 7th inning, you needed somebody to like fill in, and that's what he did.
But at the same time, like again, we're talking about and again, maybe this is just obviously I don't think it's the Cardinals shouldn't be celebrating being a hopefully an okay enough regular season team, and that's their ceiling. Like I think that's so disappointing. But I'm also trying to figure out, okay, what's the most optimistic route, which is that they're an okay regular season team that can make the playoffs. In the regular season, you're not going to face lockdown relievers every single inning and lockdown starting pitchers every single inning. So again, it's like I'm talking about like over the whole course of 162 games, you're going to see more Michael Groves than you are going to see Bobby Miller. And if they could put up runs against them, which also you have to put up runs against the Bobby Millers of the world sometimes. You can't always get shut down by them. If that happens, then yeah, the season's going to be over if you can never hit good starting pitching. But when you're not hitting good starting pitching, which also Bobby Miller isn't just a good starter. He was a really good starter on top of his game last night. If he was like, because sometimes you can tell a starter's just kind of cutting them apart, but the offense just looks really bad. Like it's just sometimes I have a hard time being like, Bobby Miller looks so filthy, Cardinals offense sucks. It's like, how about Bobby Miller is so filthy, you're going to shut down a good offense. And then again, they went and they got to Michael Grove right after. So I think that's encouraging. If they didn't do that, and then you had 2 straight games where the starter locked you down, and then a far inferior reliever like Yarborough shuts you down, that's when I'd be like, dang, this offense, you can't do that. You have to score runs. So anyways, we'll see. But let's talk about the offense, though. Is there any hitters? I know there's a clear one that we've talked about a little bit, and I'll let you run with it. But you can talk about Dodgers-wise or Cardinals-wise. Any hitters that are really impressing you right now? Who's on a heater for you?
The whole Dodgers lineup, pretty much. I feel like I don't know. Like I was convinced that Shohei Ohtani was going to have a big game yesterday because they asked him interview through the interpreter, the new interpreter, or whatever. He was like. Basically said that he was disappointed that he was the first one of the big 3, not the MV3. That's not a thing, Dodgers fans. That's ours. But he was the only one out of those 3 guys who didn't homer in the first game. So I was like, oh, Shohei Ohtani usually gets what he wants. So he's going to homer and have a big game. But we also predicted that he was going to hit 2 off Lance Lynn tonight. So that's not good. But I feel like that whole lineup is just like – you can get through Betts, Ohtani, Freeman, and then you have Will Smith, and you have Teoscar Hernandez, and you have Max Muncy, who can all take you deep, right? Yesterday, the bottom of the order was like Kike Hernandez, Chris Taylor, and Miguel Rojas. And even Miguel Rojas hit a home run. It's like, okay, well, like if we're giving up home runs to their defensive replacements, that's a bit of a problem, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, for the Cardinals side, I guess Paul Goldschmidt's on a heater. But
yes, dude, he's got 1,600 OPS right now. Come on.
Right. Yeah, okay. But like when the rest of the
2 walks
team,
yesterday, 3 hits the day before,
for 27 in the first game, it's kind of hard to pick another guy. Like Nolan Gorman had a good game yesterday, but like he went over in the first game, so like I don't know.
Yeah,
I think
I'd say like
should have had a hit in that first game. I think he would have beat that throw no matter what. But the scorekeeper was like, you know what, that's an error on Mookie Betts. Okay,
yeah,
he got to steal it.
Yeah, I'll say Paul Goldschmidt looks really good. I feel like he's mostly taking really good at bats too. Like he's taking his walks when they're there. He had 2 yesterday, 3 hits the other night. Yeah, so especially coming off of spring where people were really concerned about Goldschmidt, he's looking really good. And also, that's one of the sneaky things about the Cardinals last year that was a significant step back for them. And part of the reason the offense, like I did a story where I talked about why the Cardinal, or I did 2 different ones. I looked at April last year and why they were so bad, and I looked at May last year and why they were above 500 team on pace for 87 wins. And in April, their offensive stats were actually pretty similar to May, but the problem was they weren't scoring runs. And then in May, they actually took a little bit regression in their like WRC plus OPS and stuff, but the middle of the order was producing. And you have to have that happen to score runs. And so I think that's a really good sign. Is like last year or 2 years ago, you had Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt who were MVP candidates in the middle of their lineup. So they're consistently driving in runs. And then last year, you had a lot of guys that were really streaky, not really hitting at the right times, all that. If Gorman and Goldschmidt or Arenado, like whoever they decide their top 3 hitters are in the middle of the lineup, are producing and driving in those guys, this is a different team. And again, I'm really encouraged by last night. They scored 3 runs off of Grove, which again, I'm not trying to act like Michael Grove's some beast, but again, that's part of the blueprint for this team. He's got to get to the bullpen and start scoring when there's really good pitcher on the mound. So I'm impressed by Goldschmidt so far. I thought Gorman's been pretty good. Like he's going to strike out some, so that's part of his game. But I'm impressed that he's taking the ball the other way and getting hits when he's not slugging the ball for a home run there. And yeah, I'm really eager to see how this lineup goes against Yamamoto tonight. Just because, yeah, we know obviously he's insanely talented, but it's early, so we don't really know if he's got it yet. Like he'll be good, but like, is he settled in yet? And then you have Stone on Sunday, I believe. That's the one they really got to hit. Like if they don't hit Gavin Stone,
yeah, no.
Like I mean, Gavin Stone's a good prospect, but like there's no excuse. Like you can't get shut down by all 4 starters here. So that doesn't mean I'm going to panic after that, but it will be like this was a terrible series. Like come on, you can't do that. So. But Yamamoto tonight, even like they need to be patient with him if he's a little erratic like he was in the Padres series. But we'll have to see what happens with that.
I'll say one thing, like they made some additions this offseason, but like the reason we're seeing the same team from last year is because aside from one Matt Carpenter at bat and like Riley O'Brien's 1 inning, like everyone who has made an appearance for this team was on the team last year, right? So
Victor Scott and Mason Wynn's pretty new still.
True. Victor Scott,
but you're right. It's mostly the same team.
Like we haven't seen any of like the big additions, like Kittredge, Middleton's been out, Sonny Gray's out. Like Lance Lynn tonight is the first like glimpse we're gonna get of the new look that was built this offseason, right? Do I have confidence in Lance Lynn to go out there and not be on Shohei Ohtani's career highlight reel for the rest of time? No, I don't. But maybe like Mo has proved me wrong before, right? I was not excited about John Lester and J Happ, and they were good. So maybe for a little bit of optimism, I know I've been super negative today, but maybe for a little bit of optimism, Lance Lynn.
People think I hold Mo's water. Oh my god!
I just said Shohei Ohtani was going to take him deep.
But you just said that you're like J Happ and John Lester, which is true. Like that, they have to give him credit, but
they were good. They were good for us down the stretch. Like no one was excited for them. I don't want them to ever do that again. Like please don't go out and trade for Rich Hill this offseason or this deadline. Like that would make me really upset if that was all they did. But like it worked once.
Yeah. I'd say like yeah, and I agree with a lot of that. I think one of the things that's just it's been I think just continues to get proven over and over again is how much of a difference the lack of the shift has made. Especially as the Cardinals at the same time as the shift going away have gotten worse defensively. It's like if you're going to build a pitching staff like this, you have to have a good defense behind you. But clearly they've committed to the offense because they need enough offense to score. But then like Nolan Gorman's not a terrible defender, but he's not a good defensive second baseman. Jordan Walker's not a good right fielder. Brendan Donovan's out in left field right now, and he's average out there. You've got a lot of like, I mean, you do have Victor Scott, Mason Wynn, and Nolan Arenado now, so that's helpful. When you get Newbar back and left, that'll help. But I think that's one of the oxymorons of this team is they've built a pitching staff where you need a good defense behind it, but they also need a really good offense to make up for the pitching staff. So they put in some more offensively gifted guys than defensively gifted guys. We'll see how it works out. Let's do one more reflection and then let's look ahead to the rest of the series and maybe some things that we want to see from this team that maybe give us a little bit more encouragement. This is one that we kind of did last time. And I think I've got a decision I didn't like, so I'll lead with it. And then if you've got something, this is a segment we're going to like call know when to fold them. Okay. And usually this is going to be about a decision Ollie has made, or maybe John Mosaic sometimes we're like, dude, that was terrible. What are you thinking? And for me, Ollie, you got to know in the first inning not to bring the infield in. What are you doing? Like, he does this a lot, and I love. Well, I shouldn't say love Ollie as a manager. I really like him, and I think he's gonna. I think he's got what it takes. I didn't. I don't. Should have let me say this first. I don't think they should have extended him. I thought that was not wise. But I think he's. I just think he gets more crap than he deserves sometimes, especially because like look at the roster, the pitching staff. Don't know what you do with it, but beside the point. He does this thing where early in games he'll be super aggressive with the defense, bringing them in, and people have asked him about it, and he always kind of defends it. There was no point to bring the infield in there. They were going to score the run. The only way they weren't going to score the run is if you strike him out. Mookie Betts is pretty fast. Freddie Freeman is world class at the bat. He knows how to put the ball in the right place to score the run there. You just got to give it up. Because what he did there and what ended up happening is he opened up Miles Michaelis for an even bigger inning where he probably would have still given. How many runs did he give up? The inning 4, I think, in the first inning or something like. He at least would have given up one less run because the way he did. Are you sure only 2 runs that inning?
It was the first inning of game
1.
So
then he only would have given up 1 run that inning because Freddie Freeman made really weak contact that would have been an easy out at first base, and he could have navigated the rest of the inning. But all he did there is he brought the infield in, and he kept the inning going because of that, and they scored another run. I just didn't like it. I thought that was a really dumb decision, and I really don't like when they're that aggressive early with it because I think it shows you don't trust the pitching staff, and you also, in a weird way, you say you don't trust the offense to score those runs back. Like in the first inning, you just gotta let it happen. You gotta let it happen. So that was a poor decision in my part, in my opinion. Not on my part. It wasn't my fault. That was Ollie's fault.
Yeah, and Ohtani in the first inning gave you a gift, right? He took a little gamble, tried to go to third, and like I don't know what he was like. I don't know what he was doing, man. Like
he must have bet on himself to have a triple.
Yeah, right. Over 0.5 triples. Anyway. Yeah, I'll say that Ollie's post-game comments after game 1 kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He said something along the lines of, "Yeah, Miles Michaelis, he had a great line, or like did a nice job today." And I was like, "Well, did he? Because he went out there, he gave you like what 4.1 innings, gave up 5 earned runs. His ERA is over 10 now. It's like he didn't locate. He gave up just a lot of bad contact, had issues with his command, and it's like I don't really think he had a great game or even a nice game or even a good game. I would say it was pretty disaster worthy start, especially when he was talking so much smack coming into LA, being like, "Yeah, look at us, we're the farmers, we're gonna like stick it to the Dodgers." And like if you come in saying all of that and then you put up a 5 spot in 4.1 innings, like just don't even sugarcoat it. Just be like, "Yeah, he didn't have a great day today. We're working on some stuff and get better." But like don't sit there and complacently be like, "Yeah, he had a nice day." Okay.
Yeah.
Like he didn't. Don't lie to the media. Like it comes off. I understand that like these post-game interviews don't really mean anything, and they're definitely going to be working on stuff behind the scenes, but like it sends a bad message to the fans. Like it sends the message that you don't really care about winning this game, right? Like if you say that giving up 5 runs is a nice start, then like what's a bad start? Do you have to give up like 10 runs? Like where does it get to like be disappointing?
Yeah. True. I do not disagree with you all there. So let's go ahead and look at what we want to see or hoping to see from the next. So between now and the next recording, they should have all the rest of the not should. They will finish the series against the Dodgers, but I guess there's some rain, so we'll see if they get to play the games. And then they go to San Diego face the Padres.
It's over. Cancel it.
Cancel the series. Might be for the best. So Andrew, what's the flop looking like for the Cardinals?
So tonight we talked about it. We got Lance Lynn against Yamamoto. Well, we'll see. Tomorrow we got Steven Matz against not Michael Grove, Gavin Stone. These guys' names sound similar. I don't know.
Yeah,
I feel like that's the winnable game in this series, right? Like Gavin Stone is a young kid, didn't have a great season last year. If he's nasty, then I'm really gonna be worried about this team, right?
Yeah.
And then Monday we go into San Diego. Kyle Gibson against MLB The Show legend Matt Waldron Please don't throw like a billion knuckleballs. That would be bad. And then Tuesday, we got Miles Michaelis against Yu Darvish. And then on Wednesday, we have, it says TBD for the Cardinals, presumably Zach Thompson. I thought he did well enough to earn another start yesterday, and he'll be facing Joe Musgrove. Darvish and Musgrove, kind of wild cards. You don't really know what you're going to get out of them. They're kind of inconsistent. You need to jump on those guys. Matt Waldron, I don't know anything about him other than the fact that his bronze card in MLB The Show throws a nasty knuckle. Like, I don't know anything about him, but
yeah,
he's their fifth starter. You got to jump on him. And another storyline is who's going to be managing that Padres team. So,
man, it's the pupil versus his old sensei.
Yeah, it's
oh man,
it'll be fun.
Yeah, I definitely the things I'm looking for the rest of this Dodgers series, but then especially in the Padres series. But first, you're looking for a little bit more competitive starts. So, I'm not asking I'm not asking Lance Lynn or Steven Matz to go out there and shove, but if they can give 5 innings, 2 earned runs, or 5 innings, 3 earned runs, 6 innings, 4 earned runs, that's like more of a competitive start. Against the Dodgers, though, that's gonna be tough to come back from. So like against the Padres, I feel more confidence in winning a game when you do that. But even if they could do that against this Dodgers lineup, that again, I'm not expecting the staff to be amazing. So that kind of stuff is helpful. You can't really, it's tough when you're giving 5 runs or 6 runs in these starts. So I'm looking for something like that. The lineup, though, that's the big thing is you, especially with Yamamoto. Again, he's super talented. So if he's on his game tomorrow, that's like if he's on his game, they need to do their best to work the counts and get him to get out of the game as quickly as possible so they can get to that bullpen and try to muster up anything they can. But then especially on Sunday against Stone, they really need to get after him if they can. And then the bullpen to continue to look strong. But then the Padres series is where I think you like all 3 of those games are winnable. Doesn't mean they're going to win all 3 games, but Yu Darvish is a bigger name than he is a pitcher at this point. He's not as good as he used to be. So I think it's Michaelis or Gibson against Darvish. Which one?
Michaelis. Gibson will start against.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a winnable start. Gibson's against
Matt Waldron.
Oh, Matt Waldron. Yeah, that's definitely a winnable game. And then you've got Zach Thompson against Musgrove. That'll be the toughest game of the series. Musgrove's their best starter. You could say him or Cease. So yeah, I just think it's you got to put more runs on the board. This team has to score a lot of runs to win games. Again, my bold prediction is they could be a top 3 offense in baseball, but also when you don't have Nootbaar right now, I think it's a little bit weaker of a lineup. And that it was meant to be bold. It's meant to be a bold prediction. But they have to be a top 10 unit in baseball if they want to compete in games with this pitching staff. So they got to put that together. Yeah, and then I feel like the defenses look pretty good so far, which I'm impressed by. So the defense needs to keep not being like as long as like if Victor Scott, Mason Wynn, Nolan Arenado can make up for the average defense around them, and then Walker isn't making huge mistakes or Gorman isn't making a huge mistake out there, Donovan is making a huge mistake out there. That's really helpful for this pitching staff. But yeah, I'm mainly just looking for I'm not looking for the pitching staff to shove. I'm just looking for the starters to maybe not give up 5 runs, but give up 3 or 4 runs and give you some innings, and then the bullpen to come and shut it down. The offense look good. I think that it's very possible. Again, I'm not going to panic and say that the season's over if they don't do that in these next few games. But I mean, if they come out of this, obviously 0-7, that'd be really bad. Or like 2-5, then I'm definitely going to be like, oh gosh, this is not good. But before this Marlins series, I really want to see a lot of that going down. So is there anything else specifically you're looking for?
I'm looking for a win. I just want to win one game. And I'm looking for the starting pitcher, either hopefully in both games, to not let up a run in the first inning. And I know that's hard.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Like, those 3 guys, I don't know. I thought Ohtani and Trout was good. That's like miles better because you got another guy in there who's going to give you some help. And like, I don't know. You just need to shut it down in the first inning, set the tone early, and you need to score first. You can't be playing catch up against the Dodgers because you're not going to win. Like, it's just not going to happen. And against the Padres, I'm looking for a lot more competitive games. I'm looking to see this team win that series. I need 2 out of 3 at least in San Diego, especially if they drop one or two of the next 2 Dodgers games. You need to take 2 out of 3 from San Diego.
Fair. Yeah, I agree. Also, something that I think is interesting. I know we said it earlier, but again, when you're a team like the Dodgers and you've built, and this isn't an excuse. This is to say like they've done a really good job building their team. When you've done a poor job building your entire organization, like the Cardinals have had recently, you can't really afford to be missing certain players. And so I am interested to see how this team performs. And Nootbaar and Gray are back. Um, but this is more so when you're facing the Dodgers of the world. Like I do wonder if maybe they could be slightly more competitive in these games at full strength, but again, this is baseball. You're going to have injuries, though. So you can't just play that game the whole season because every team's going to do that. But when you're a team with as little margin for error as the Cardinals, then it matters a lot more than maybe it does for the Dodgers. Like if Yamamoto went out, they'd be okay. But if Gray goes out for the Cardinals, completely different story. But if Miles Michaelis went out for the Cardinals, I don't know if it's that big of a difference. So maybe the wrong guys are going out right now. Maybe that's the thing. Not wishing injuries on anyone. That's not what I'm doing here. But
yeah. Last thing I want to touch on is our Twitter poll that we put out last night after the game.
Oh,
Are the
yeah,
Cardinals
yeah.
going to have a repeat of 2023? There's already almost 2,000 votes on it, and almost 78% of people already think that they're going to have a repeat of 2023. And honestly, I'm kind of in that camp. I might have voted yes on it. Who's to say? But I don't know. I think 78% like is a little bit too high. But yeah, it's the vibes aren't great in Cardinal Nation right now. Hopefully, we can steal a game or two and make it better. But I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Man, we're getting some some responses in the chat saying that we're gonna look silly when the Cardinals win tonight. I feel like I'm one of the highest people on the Cardinals there are out here. So that's the thing that's like, man, if I'm gonna vent for a second, sometimes I get annoyed because I'm like, I feel like I get crap all the time for being too positive, and then when I say something negative, then the people that want to be are positive are calling me out for being negative. I'm like, you can't win. You can't win. Anyways. I think this team's fine. I think they're going to be an 80 something win team and they're going to make the playoffs, but they're going to look terrible against the Dodgers. It's just how it is. Maybe they still win a game. It's just they're not in the same class. So sorry. That poll doesn't surprise me because everyone's reactionary. It's like the NFL, like week 1 of a season. If a Super Bowl, like if the Chiefs lose game 1 of this season, people are like, oh, are the Chiefs not going to repeat this year? Are they not a good team? Or they have a Super Bowl hangover? It's like, everyone wants to act like we all don't act emotionally and stuff, but then the second an inning happens in a game, people give up on a team. And it's even funnier in baseball because it's 162 games, and we've seen plenty of teams like 2019. The Nationals had one of the worst starts to the league, ended up winning the World Series. Phillies 2021, I think it was when they went to the World Series, had won or 2022. They fired their manager midseason, were terrible, made the World Series. Not saying the Cardinals are doing that, but you just 2 games you can't take.
I'm not firing Ollie. But that's what everybody wants.
Well, here's the thing. I don't actually think it's impossible to fire Ollie. I think when they say they didn't want to become a storyline, I think the fair part of it is that clearly when you don't have a contract going to the next year, everyone could be like, see, it's so easy, you just pull the plug. When you've got the extension, even people could still call for his job. It's not gonna like Cardinals Nation's gonna stop calling for Ollie's job, but it's not as like clear that they could just cleanly cut it. But they fired Mike Matheny right after giving him an extension. So I don't think they will be afraid to do that. And actually, Katie Wu made a really good point about this. I think the front office kind of pointed the I don't want to say the gun. That seems really morbid. Pointed the finger at themselves with the Ollie extension, because basically what they communicated to everyone is that we believe in Ollie. And so we think Ollie can handle this. And so if the team goes bad, that means we built him a bad roster. So, which I think has been the problem last year. I think it was a front office and ownership thing less than an Ollie thing. Like, not to say Ollie didn't have issues, but again, I don't think Bruce Bochy's fixing that pitching staff last year. So, and we'll see how it goes this year. So, I'm not giving up on the season. Honestly, if anything, it's just kind of reaffirmed my expectations of, like, I think if they had been playing positively, maybe I could have tried to convince myself that, oh, maybe like you've got a fighter's chance against the Dodgers in a series. No, they don't. They don't. They would have to make significant changes to this team to add probably 2 really good starting pitchers to even begin that kind of conversation where you have a puncher's chance. But this doesn't stop me from thinking they could beat the Reds, they could beat the Brewers, they could beat the Marlins, they could beat the Phillies. Like, again, not that they should be favored against the Phillies, but they can win against the Phillies. But the Braves and Dodgers of the world, yeah, those series are going to look ugly. It just probably will. But good thing every team is in the Braves and Dodgers. So
Yeah,
here we are.
I haven't given up yet. I've said some negative things over the last 2 days. I thought I was going
Yeah,
to be happy.
our text chain's not looking good right now for me and
Yeah,
Drew.
I mean, half of that is just my joking that Nolan Gorman sucks, and
Yeah.
like that's not. I don't actually think that, but
Okay.
like,
Oh my gosh. Some of the Twitter threads I saw yesterday, there was someone who said bring Mike Schilt back. Okay. This is not against Mike Schilt, but Mike Schilt doesn't change those games yesterday. I promise you that. And then second, people were coming
Mike
out
Schilt.
saying Nolan
In
Gorman.
fairness, Mike Schilt managed better games against the Dodgers. Okay, like those 2 games that he managed against the Dodgers looked a lot better. And the Dodgers only won that first game because Jake Cronenworth's glove fell apart. Like that's not his fault. So I don't know.
I would say that he went to the bullpen. He played anyways. It's fine. I will just agree to disagree. I'm fine. It's whatever. But the point is, Mike Schill hasn't changed those games. And then I saw people already right after Nolan Gorman struck out against Bobby Miller, being like, "No, can we stop calling Nolan Gorman a good player? He's so overrated. He's traded." I'm like, this guy outside of June last year was a top 20 hitter in all of baseball. You can go look it up if you take away his June stats, which again, it's cherry picking, but a 350 at bat sample size. He was horrible the month of June. You can't excuse that. But he was a 134 WRC plus guy, which puts him in like definitely all-star and then like top of the league bats. This guy's good. So people, gosh, the overreactions kill me. They kill me. They kill me. I forget about it every year. I forget that every single game people act like it's like gospel of how the rest of the season is going to go. Oh, sample sizes. We need more. We need more. But I get it. That's fair. You're coming off a terrible season. So it's not like last year you could point to like last year they were really good. You can't point to last year and be like it was better. So I get that, but I'm not freaking out. So we'll see. But I'm also more open to the idea that the season could be bad. I am more open to that.
I think 2 things can be true at once. I think 1, the Dodgers could be one of the best teams of all time, right? I think that's pretty much agreed upon by like most people that the Dodgers have the potential to win like 110, 115 games this year. That's fine. But the other thing can be true that the Cardinals don't look competitive right now. They should be putting up a better fight. They should be battling more in their at-bats. They shouldn't be striking out this much. And they should just be better as an offensive unit. I think both are true right now. I think I didn't have too high of expectations going into this year. I think I had the Cardinals losing in the wild card round to some team. I don't remember, but like I think this first 2 games have not made me any more confident that this team will be better than it was last year.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I think that's a great way to end it. It's impossible to ignore the potential that this Dodgers team could just be it could end up being a really, really like not just a really, really good team, but a historically good team. And so it's hard to take full conclusions about the Cardinals out of it. But the Cardinals haven't done enough this series to change anyone's questions about them. And so we'll have to see what happens. I think my expectations for this team coming in the year is about somewhere in the 80s wins, make the playoffs, not much in the postseason, but we'll see. But yeah, that's why I'm excited to see what happens the rest of this Dodgers series. Because I mean, it'll be really funny though if they end up winning 2 games of the series. If they win the next 2 games, and then what is Twitter going to do?
I will be very happy if they do that. I'm just not hanging my hat on it.
Yeah. But yeah, that's fair. But then I want to see what happens with the rest of the series, and I really want to see what happens with the Padres and Marlins. And then again, it's still too early to say what this team will fully be, but then you can start at least getting some trends there. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to see what happens. Thanks for joining us. Again, this is a tensious time in Cardinal Nation. We'll have to see. We appreciate everyone who tunes in. If this is your first time watching and you enjoyed our content, we would love for you to subscribe. We do 2 episodes a week and plenty have a guest on Wednesday, or we're working on that right now. And I think you'll really like him. So I got to reach out to him still. And then, yeah, we have a lot of fun guests on here, like Victor Scott II, Katie Wu, different people on Talk Cardinal Baseball. Obviously, we're always here to talk stuff. But until next time, it's been a fun one.